Alright, everybody, time for the last bit of foreign news today, and then I'm going to be covering some more domestic shit. But from Reuters, it says, EU agrees Brexit delay as British Parliament blocks December election. From London, the European Union agreed to a Brexit delay of up to 3 months on Monday as Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he would push on with his bid to end Britain's political paralysis with an election on December 12th. When the United Kingdom's scheduled on October 31st departure from the EU now virtually certain to be postponed, Brexit hangs in the balance, with British politicians still arguing over how, when, or even whether the divorce should take place at all. Johnson, who had loudly promised to deliver Brexit on October 31st, do or die, has repeatedly demanded an election to end what he casts as a nightmare political deadlock that is sapping public trust by preventing any Brexit outcome at all. The idea of leaving the EU is growing more and more popular, mostly because Britain has finally came around to realizing what kind of globalist shit stain that the European Onion has become. I mean, look what they did to France by encouraging the election of leaders like frickin' Emmanuel Macron. The people who support the globalist political ideology, they don't represent their people. They represent themselves, or they represent whatever foreign power encouraged their election, in this case Brussels. They'll knock your ass flat and drag you kicking and screaming to obey Brussels' will. They say it's just a trade alliance. But as I've said, I believe I've been on this rant before. But you know how it ends. It's more than just a trade alliance if they can dictate border policy. Or if they can censor memes. That strikes me as a lot more than just a trade alliance. A lot of people in Britain want to leave the EU. And I say, good! Leave the EU. Leave the Onion behind. And maybe you'll start a chain reaction where the layers start to be peeled away. Okay, enough metaphors about onions. Hours after the 27 countries remaining in the EU backed his reluctant request for a delay, Johnson attempted to force a snap election on December 12th in the hope of finally winning a majority to pass the divorce deal he has negotiated with Brussels. But his third attempt to call such an election gathered only 299 votes in Parliament, short of the 424 or two-thirds of the House that he needed. After the vote, Johnson said he would try again by a legislative route that would only require a simple majority. We will not allow this paralysis to continue, and one way or another we must proceed, straight to an election, Johnson told Parliament. This House cannot any longer keep this country hostage. To follow this route, Johnson will need the support of opposition parties such as the Scottish National Party and the Liberal Democrats. These have been pushing for a December 9th election, aiming to ensure that Johnson cannot try again to rush his divorce deal through. The BBC's political editor said Johnson's office had confirmed that the government would not bring the deal back to Parliament, potentially opening the way for SNP and Lib Dems to back a snap poll on Johnson's preferred date of December 12th. Divided Kingdom. After almost 4 years of torturous discussion, the United Kingdom remains divided over a divorce that removes what was once considered to be one of the West's most stable democracies from the European project. While almost all British politicians agree that an election is needed, they want to inflict maximum political damage on Johnson, who leads in opinion polls by preventing his last-minute deal from being ratified before the poll. Johnson, in turn, is trying to shift the blame for failing to deliver Brexit by October 31st onto Parliament. We have a great new deal, and it's time for the voters to have a chance to pronounce on that deal, and to replace that dysfunctional Parliament with a new Parliament that can get Brexit done so the country can move on. Johnson said. I was making no attempt to sound like Johnson. I was just doing a general British accent. Britain's departure has already been delayed twice, from March 29th and April 12th. After Johnson's predecessor Theresa May failed 3 times to get her deal ratified by Parliament, in a letter to European Council President Donald Tusk, Johnson reluctantly accepted the delay agreed in Brussels, saying he had no choice under British law. This unwanted prolongation of the UK's membership of the EU is damaging to our democracy, he said. You know, I've heard that kind of language before, damaging to our democracy. Sounds a little similar to what the Democrats here in the United States use. I would also urge EU member states to clear that a further extension after the 31st January is not possible. This is plenty of time to ratify our deal. If no EU country objects within 24 hours by Tuesday afternoon, the delay will have been formally adopted. The EU, forged from the ruins of World War II as a way to prevent another ruinous conflict in Europe, is fatigued by Britain's protracted crisis, but keen not to be held responsible for an economically tumultuous no-deal rapture. Yeah, if you want more proof that the EU is not just a trade alliance and is an actual globalist power, forged from the ruins of World War II as a way to prevent another ruinous conflict in Europe. It's the globalists that likes to push this narrative that nationalism caused World War I and World War II, when apparently there's some evidence that behind-the-scenes manipulation by globalists caused the First World War. And the World War II was basically just Germany wanting to get some good old revenge. The Holocaust is a little overemphasized and it gets to bury some of the other facts. I'm not denying it happened, it definitely happened. But it was not the cause of the war. Germany wanting revenge for getting bowled by the rest of the world is getting screwed over the rest of the world with reparations is what caused the war. But yeah, Britain wants to leave an authoritarian superpower that has screwed over so many other countries that they've played witness to. I don't blame them. And of course they're going to delay it, and you know why. The Parliament doesn't actually want to do Brexit. Probably because, for two reasons. Reason number one, many of them actually think the EU is a good thing and want to stay regardless of what the people think. Again, EU globalist politicians not representing themselves rather than the people. The other reason being is that maybe they're afraid that Brexit is just going to be too dangerous and there's going to be some major economic repercussions that could eventually ruin their status as the world's fifth largest economy. And mind you, that reason is actually pretty good. Their fears are reasonable. But given the alternative, Brexit looks much more attractive, maybe not from an economic standpoint, but from a civil rights and proper representation standpoint. The people have spoken. They want to leave. The majority wants to leave. And as with any society, the minority must make itself conform to the majority, but the majority must also make sure not to be cruel to the minority. Case in point, Brexit should happen. Otherwise, you end up like France. Anyway. Peace.